Hello, in this season, a lot of you have just received your first SCX24 and you want to know what the essentials are, things you should probably look at upgrading. And these are what I would recommend. When you get your SCX24 and you want to upgrade it, get some metal wheels. Choose whether you want big tires or small tires. Big tires are scramblers, mudslingers, and the little guy trail kings. And the small tires are pretty much everything else. But get some metal wheels. They are so much better. They give you about 10 grams more per wheel as you start to upgrade your truck. The more weight you get down low, the more stable it's going to be. And consider getting yourself a set of knuckles. These are what go on the ends of the front axle, and they actually pivot, and they add a lot of weight and a lot of stability to the front. It comes with a wrench, and these are hex weights. They'll go and help your truck be more stable as well. I only add them on the front, so it's really only necessary to get 2 of them, and that's plenty. You don't want to start putting a lot of weight on the back of your truck, because sometimes the front of the truck has to drag the back, and the lighter the back is, the easier it will pull it up. The only reason I add weight to the back of my truck is to keep it from forward flipping on descents, and I only add barely enough to get it to do what I need it to do. And get yourself a brass diff cover. There's a couple versions. This one's about 9 grams. There's a 13-gram one that's also pretty cool, and I would go ahead and spend the money on that. Why not? And I don't have one yet, but kind of an optional but really nice thing is a brass steering link from Mo4RC. He's got the only brass one that I know of. It weighs 9 grams, and that's weight up front where you want it. If you're going to be doing a lot of modifications like I do, get yourself some type of a wheel wrench for the lug nuts. This one is a Mo4RC. This one's a RC 4-wheel drive one. It comes with the stamped steel wheels, and this is really a great tool. It's almost worth buying the wheels just to get that wrench. And get yourself a good set of drivers, because these things, if you're doing a lot of modifications, really help out a lot. And you'll want a 1.3 and a 1.5 millimeter, and those really help out. They'll save you a ton of time. Otherwise, you are stuck with this little Allen wrench, and the truck comes with one, but you won't like it. It's a mess, takes forever, and these things are so quick they can just buzz everything off. The other thing that's nice about them is they don't strip out the heads of bolts, so I would recommend spending the money on these. Get yourself a good set of drivers. Again, Mo4RC sells those, and that's where I got mine. I love them. The next thing we'll look at is the actual truck, and this will be what I do when I first get one out of the box. This is not an unboxing video. I hate those, but I'm only doing this to show you that this thing is coming straight out of the box the way it is from the factory. And you can run it just like this for a while and be just fine. However, when I get a new truck, first thing I do is look at the axles and see if the wheels can move freely, if they'll bounce at all. And this one, actually the back axle is pretty good. See how this the tire here kind of bounces? If I move the other one, those are pretty good. Sometimes these hex nuts are on too tight, and that'll burn up your motor. If these are too tight from right out of the box, your motor's done. It'll last a week. The front side, these are tight. Notice if I move that one, this side doesn't rotate at all. See that? Look at this. I can move either of those, and the other side moves. So we've got at least one here that's too tight. Let me run the other one. Other side's too tight as well. This right here, this front axle, will add so much heat to the motor that it will not last. You've got to make sure those are right, and that's why you want to have one of these lug nut tools And all you got to do to fix it is back them off just a little bit. Just enough to free those up. Still not enough. We're getting there. How about this side? A little more. And you want to put some Loctite glue on there just to keep from losing the nuts on it. We're getting there, but you get the point on that. If those nuts are too tight, your truck's going to burn up. It's just it happens quick. There's some people that get 2 or 3 runs out of a motor and it's done. So we're getting there. We go. This one's needing a little bit more still. So it's significantly too tight right out of the box. There we go. See how I got that bouncing going? That's how it should be. All right, so I got these body pins. They're cool. I usually trade them out for something magnetic. In here, I always usually tuck these wires in as far as I can to get out of the way of the arc of the wheels. And on the bottom side in the back, some of these you don't get full flex. This one does. A lot of times this, let me get a pointer here. These screws that come off the side of the front battery mount will get into the control links. And it's more so on the C10 than the deadbolt. The deadbolt's pretty good. Where the deadbolt has issues is right in here. Try to get a better view on that. Where this front drive shaft yoke gets into the ball of this wishbone upper suspension link. Another thing, straight out of the box, this neither drive shaft is phased properly, and I'm going to show you what that means here in a second. This is a separate drive shaft that I had just in my box, and you'll notice that this is called a slip joint here, that place that allows the expansion and contraction. I'm going to zoom in on it for you. And you'll notice that it makes kind of a straight beam. If I had the ball yoke and the end yoke over here, you'll notice that this right here, this part here, and this part here are in alignment. And that is called being in phase. If it was put together like this, you see how this side looks proper still. I haven't moved it, but this side is no longer aligned. And when you put these together, they can go any way of 3 different directions, and only one of them is phased. That's not phased, that is phased. We got a straight line, goes from this pivot joint to this pivot joint. If it's out like that, it's not going to rotate properly. So looking back at this one, we can see that this one, the front drive shaft, is actually 180 degrees out of phase, because we can see the pivot joint here and we see an open gap here on the inner portion of the drive shaft. The outer portion and this outer portion don't match either because the inners don't. On this one, it's also 180 degrees out of phase. So, sorry, get that in the camera. The pivot ball's here. I got an open hole here on the inner yokes. You're looking at the inner yokes to line them up. And that's kind of poor, really. I would think that, I mean, it doesn't probably matter too much at this scale, but it's something to really think about, because I think it does matter. You want your truck to work as well as it possibly can. I'll add a link to my other drive shaft phasing video if you want to see more about it in the description. But from there, there's not much you really have to do once you know that everything is moving freely. Again, like I said on the C10s, this screw here sometimes goes through on both sides and comes in contact with that upper control arm. And if you feel that plastic bending before it reaches full compression on the shocks, it's binding. You don't want that, because you're giving away performance for nothing. Stock shocks are great. There's not much that's better than a stock shock, to be honest. They're good. The only thing I would do is add flex blades, personal choice, and that's a kind of a optional upgrade, but I like them a lot. They give you just a little bit more articulation, and I only put them on the rear axle because more than that you just start giving up climb performance and steep grade performance as well. On this side, this motor has a heat blanket on it, and it's that sticker right there. I don't like that sticker on there at all because all it does is just captures heat, won't let it dissipate, and your motor will burn up sooner. What I like to do is listen to the sound of it when I drive it for the first time, because I can tell right away at this point if the gears are binding or if they're not binding, and it has to sound right. And I'm gonna hook this battery up and show you hopefully what it sounds like not binding, if they did their job right at the factory and didn't over tighten the gear mesh between the motor and the transmission. Okay, I'm going to show you what they should sound like from the factory, and they did a nice job on the gear mesh, because listen to this. It kind of has that light sound. It's good. Doesn't sound heavy or chunky or binding. Now I'm going to intentionally tighten one of these lug nuts too tight, just to show you what it shouldn't sound like. It's probably not a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. The motor can take a little bit of abuse. Actually, now here's a weird thing. Some of these tires, you can tighten them all the way down and they won't bind. Other ones, if you tighten them down, they're stuck. And this one can stick too much. I still want it to turn, but can you hear the difference in that? That zippy sound. That is a bad sound. You don't want that to happen. Here's the way it should sound again. Here how it's more free. You can just tell by the sound of it. And there's a lot of stuff I do beyond what I've showed you. I'm going to pull it apart here before I even put it on the rocks for the first time, and I'll show you what I do just to get it ready for modification. Alright, if you can take off 7 screws, you can have the motor out. What you've got to do is pull off 4 on the battery tray, 1 from the top of the transmission area, 2 from underneath the car on the skid plate here, and that's it. It'll come out. Leave your drive shafts attached. Actually, you got to take off the front one too, so I'll say 8 screws. The first 6 come out with a 1.3 millimeter driver. Pull that off, and I'll find 10 screws. The first 8 actually come off with the 1.3. I wasn't quite done with that, but I'm gonna, and it happens quick, but I'm gonna pull this motor plate of the transmission cover off. And the next thing I want to do is take the sticker off of this motor, and so far I've not been able to do it without removing it from the motor plate, but I'm going to try this time. And unfortunately it peels from the back side, and it goes in really tight to the transmission there, and it's hard to get it out, so I'll probably have to take it off. So what I'm going to do here is show you the gear mesh and how this needs to be when you set it. So if you hold your thumb here, this is actually pretty tight. It's tighter than I normally run it, but it sounded free, so we'll go with it. But you can see there's just a little bit of movement that I can do back and forth. Not much, but if they're so tight you don't see any without the gears moving, that'll burn your motor up. That'll sound terrible, you'll hear it, but you need to be able to have some freeness there. Too loose and you'll strip the gears, too tight and you'll overheat your motor. This is the same size nut as you find on the wheels, so I'll probably end up having to take that off. I'm going to get my knife out and try to peel this sticker off. Caution, hot. Yeah, it's hot because you're putting it under a heat blanket, but I'm going to try to pull that sticker off right now. See, that right there's the problem. You can pull it off part way, but it's so tight against the transmission housing that you just can't get the rest of it without pulling the motor. So I'm going to pull the motor, and it's simple. This gear does have a front and a back side to it, so in order to make this easy on myself, I'm just going to put a dot on it. That way, when I put it back together, if I don't see the dot, I know I've got the wrong side of the gear. And this is also a gear that can be over tightened, so I'll just spin that off. Pretty simple. I've taken to using a parts tray, and whenever I take a part off, I throw it right in the tray. Whenever I take a tool, I put that in the tray too. Now this one takes a 1.5 millimeter driver for the 2 motor screws, and in order, if you go to put a barrage motor on this thing, it'll have a hole here and a hole here. And if you want to make a barrage motor plate, you can. I'll show you what they look like, but they basically have 4 holes instead of only the 2, because the barrage motor has the screws in the opposite corners. Alright, so this is the motor off. I'm going to put these screws in my tray. Okay. But this thing will hold heat, and it will burn your motor up. I'll pull this off, and then I'll stick it all back together. It takes minutes. So I'm going to do that off camera. This is it with no sticker on it. Next thing we'll do is put it back on the truck, and just reverse it. Put the 2 1.5 millimeter screws back in. Don't set them in tight right now, because you're probably going to want to slide your motor in order to set the gear lash. That's another word for gear mesh, I guess. But they call it the lash, because that's how it goes together. And very simple. The only screws on the whole truck that don't take a 1.3 millimeter go to this motor. And I got it in a little too tight. Your adjustment to adjust the gear lash is just simply moving this gear back and forth. It changes the distance from this axle just slightly, and normally if you set it as far away as it gets, it's usually about right. Okay, if I take it this way, it's, well, I'll set the gear mesh here, but if I go clear this way, it's tighter. And, well, let's see. I'll move it till it's right, and then I'll show it to you later. But you can't have it so tight, but you can't have it real loose either. I'm going to set it clear to the left here and see where I've got my see where it stands. I'm going to do this off camera again. I ended up setting that motor clear as far right as it could go, and just to show you the lash there, I can just move the spur gear, which is the big one, and the pinion gear does not move, but they're pretty tight. Not super tight, but just a slight bit of play. And one thing I like to do before I put them together is I throw a motor in, battery on, and I listen to what it sounds like before I even put it together, because if it sounds tight, we know it can only be the gear lash. Moves pretty free. I'll continue, but before I do, I'm going to go ahead and put this 3-in-1 dry lube oil in there. I really like this stuff, and I don't know what brand it is, but I put it in the gears and the bearings, everything here, and it just makes it run a little better, a little nicer, and maybe even get some to soak into the motor. But none of these gears have any grease or oil or anything, and I use the dry lube because it doesn't attract dirt and it won't hold dirt, none of that, and it just works smoother and quieter, and I think it's one of the reasons my motors don't burn up. The only bad thing about this stuff is it smells bad. It works really good, but it smells terrible. It's probably known to the state of California to cause cancer too. I don't know. I don't really care. While I've got this apart, I'm going to take the front drive shaft yoke off of the front differential. Now, when you look at these drive shafts, this end yoke, that's the part that hooks to the output shaft of the differential there, you can see it spinning. They tend to rub right here, and that's why they've added that little cutout. Well, I don't think that's enough of a cutout, so I'm going to put my Dremel tool in there and make it a little bit wider. Even if you cut half of this away, it's still going to be strong enough. So if you want to make sure that doesn't rub, go ahead and do it here, or you can unscrew it and pull it out. It's real easy to do that, but I think I've got space with the tools I have to be able to get in there and just hog it out a little bit. It'll be fine. Alright, if you look in there, I just kind of widened this wishbone a little bit in that area. It doesn't have to be pretty, you'll never see it because the drive shaft will be right in front of it. So don't worry too much. Don't get it too thin, but don't worry about taking off a little bit of meat. It can take it. I went ahead and disconnected that upper control arm link because I want to sort of flatten out this area here just on the end. I don't want to make it too thin, but thinner, because a lot of times you'll see, not all, they don't all do it, but some of these are molded so thick that they'll rub against the end yoke on the drive shaft. So I'm going to just flatten that out a little bit, and there's various ways to do it. I'll probably just use my Dremel tool and just kind of get rid of some of that roundness on the end. Okay, right here you can see I've just flattened the bottom of that a bit, and that will never touch the drive shaft now. Still plenty of meat there. The ball joint's not going to come out, and you only actually need one side of this wishbone. My PN70 deadbolt with Fury Tech only has one side, because with the PN90 motor in there, it doesn't physically fit and let the suspension have full travel with the motor in that place. But this is ready to be put back together, and if I didn't do anything else, it's a perfect stock vehicle that will not have any overheating issues unnecessarily. And just got to put all this back together. I'll throw the screw back in, throw the end yoke back on. I'll show you that in a moment. Alright, I've got the whole thing put back together, and one way to know if your drive shafts are in phase is if all the screws that hook them together, this one's a little harder to see, but if they all make one line along the bottom of the truck, you know they're all in phase. So this is ready to go. I had an older set of stock deadbolt tires that I went ahead and put on this because I'm going to drive it a little while in its stock form. So I have this set here of tires that has never been run, not even 1 inch. So I don't know what I need them for. I guess if anybody wants them, send me a message at Facebook, and you know who I am. I'm at SCX24 Mods and Fun, and if you're seeing this, you probably follow a link to get there. These have just minimal runs on them, and maybe 1 or 2 batteries through them. These have 0. I've never driven on these tires, so if you want them, fine. If you don't, fine too. I don't care. Anyway, this thing is now ready for action, and I don't know what I'm going to do to it first other than just drive it for a little while. The next mod is going to be the I'll put some the Mofo RC Roboflex cantilever shock assemblies on the rear, and I've been waiting for that for a long time. I got those from Nick a while back, and I do apologize to him for not getting the video made sooner, but I just did not have what it took to get it done because I didn't have a truck that could actually accept them due to the modifications that are already done. So I'm going to drive this for a little while and just see how stock rigs do again. It's been so long since I've had a stock rig that it might be kind of fun. I'm going to see if it can't do most of my course. I know it's not going to do all of it. In fact, some of it I don't think it'll be able to do it all. But that's the beauty of these things. Once you start modifying them, they get better and better and better very quickly. But I showed you the mods earlier that will improve the performance in the beginning of this video. The only thing I would add to that is get yourself a hot racing Emax servo mount, and it bolts right onto the front axle here, and it's just what carries that servo. So if you're new, this is a great video. If you're not new, this is all old news to you. But I've got plenty of other videos. I post them on YouTube and Rumble, and I hope this helps, but that'll get you started. If you do the brass on the front axle like I showed you and the mods today, this motor will last a long time, and you're going to be most of the way towards a crawler that'll go anywhere. There's other things I'm going to do to it later, like make these links high clearance. They really help a lot once you do. It's a free mod if you follow the links in on my page. I'll send that link in the description as well. And once you get beyond what I've just showed you, you start bumping into the laws of physics, and the improvements come a lot more slowly, but they do come. So it's just a matter of how much time, money, and patience do you have to build these cars. But they are really fun. I enjoy them. It's a toy car. I'm an adult. I don't drink beer. I don't play pool. I don't do a whole lot of stupid crap. A lot of people do that's fun. I drive trucks. This is it. So it's what I like. I like messing with this stuff. And if you've gotten this far into the video, you're probably the same way. So I'm talking to the right people. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great new year coming up, and look forward to seeing you in more videos.